And the
Now,
presenter controls over to you, and I've hit the record button.
so everyone should see my screen,
Yes, you're good to
and
go.
it's going to begin. So, so what is Drupal, and why are we talking about this today? So when we talk about building websites, you can either build it by code, so straight up like typing in HTML code and PHP scripts and stuff like that, or you can use what's called a content management system. There's basically three main content management systems out there. There's WordPress, Drupal, and Joomla. And today we're going to just cover Drupal. It's one of my favorite ones. I use it for all the websites I develop and build, because while some people say it's more of a technical resource, or you have to be like a little bit more tech savvy, I disagree. I think it's one of the easiest to use because it does what it's supposed to. And when you're looking at WordPress or Joomla, you might get odd reactions when you do certain things. Or Drupal, it's like repetitive. It'll work the same way every single time. But essentially, this is free. It's a free open source software tool that can be used by anyone. You can download it from Drupal.org and install it on a web server to start building websites. If we're talking about Drupal as a project, so this is a graph that shows how many people, how many websites, if you will, are utilizing Drupal. The latest and greatest version of Drupal is Drupal 8, but most people are still riding on Drupal 7. And so different versions of Drupal, every time they come out with a new version, some people download, some people don't. But one of the things that people look at when they're deciding if they should upgrade from version 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 is how many modules are available that have also been updated. And so if you think of it like Windows, so Windows 10 would be your Windows 8 or Drupal 8, and Windows 7 would be your Drupal 7, if that makes sense. Not related, but that's one way to explain it. And so as you can see from the chart, based off of the week of usage, a lot of people use Drupal in terms of websites. Over, what is that? Over 1 million different websites, almost to 1.5 million websites utilize Drupal on the World Wide Web, which is pretty cool. So earlier I talked about Drupal being free, and I always tell people that it's free as in kittens, meaning it's not actually free. There's some sort of work that goes in place to get it set up or install. So either you or you have to, and you're getting paid hourly, or salary. Somebody has to get paid to put it together, or you're paying someone else to do it. Then you also have to have a place to host it, and I'll show you kind of what that hosting environment looks like. But you still have to pay for that as well. And then in terms of updates, so just like your Windows computer or your Mac, you always get updates all the time for everything. So does Drupal. Drupal pushes out security updates. Like, hey, there's a security flaw, let's fix this. And so you have to, either you are paying someone to proactively monitor that and ensure, hey, we're doing all of our updates when we're supposed to. Or we're skipping certain updates because we're not sure how it will impact our site. Because just like your own computer, when you go to update it, sometimes it crashes, right? And so you have to also plan and worry about that when you're talking about website design. And it doesn't apply just to Drupal, it applies to all of them, WordPress, Joomla, etc. Because when you run updates, some of your custom code might break, or some of the modules you're using might break. And I'll kind of dig into what all these terms are in a second. But when we say free, it's not really free. There's still costs involved. And these are kind of the costs you have to consider when you're utilizing something like this. So what is a CMS, or a content management system? And again, Drupal's not the only one. There's a whole bunch out there. You can even Wix, W-I-X, is a content management system. And what that essentially means is you log into it like a portal, and you can upload content to it. And this content could be a page. This content could be pictures or documents. It's basically anything you can think of. And then what the system pushes out is a website that you can view it on a mobile phone, or you can view it on the desktop. You can also send emails out through a content management system, or you can let people share things through content management systems, through Twitter or Facebook, and you have little icons where people click on it and things happen. But you don't have to do any crazy custom code to do it. You install something and it runs it for you, and it makes life easy. So I came back from the day where If you wanted to build a website, you had to type everything out. If you wanted your font to be blue, you have to write caret font equals, or font color equals blue, and caret, type in the text you want. The content management system, you don't have to do that. If you wanted to upload a file, and back in the old days, you had to upload a whole bunch of images to a file server, and then on your website, tell it, hey, I uploaded an image, here's where it's at. With a content management system, you upload the file, and then the system knows, hey, you uploaded this file, and we already know where it's at, so wherever you want to put this picture, we'll take care of the rest. And there's no custom coding you have to do for responsive design or anything like that. And and people use content management systems not only for websites, but for portals or intranets. So let's say you had a repository of policies at your library and you needed a place to store it. You can store it in a content management system. And then when people search for it internally, so people can get those policies or documents or printouts, whatever it may be. So when we talk about Drupal, the framework or the basic terms we should understand are themes, modules, nodes, and blocks. When you start talking about your website, the first thing you want to think about is your theme. And your theme will determine everything else. So when we talk about theme, let's talk about color or layout. How are we going to structure our website? How do people flow through our website? Do we want menus at the top of the page? Do we want menus at the bottom of the page? All that's determined through a theme. Now, Drupal does offer themes for free. And so there's a whole bunch of really cool free themes, and which are here. And it's really easy to install a theme. All you would have to do is click on the theme you want, you grab the code for it, or the download link, and you paste it into Drupal, and Drupal does the rest. You can also buy themes, which are really kind of cool. And so there's a whole bunch of pre-made themes that have the modules set up and configured, and all you're doing is installing Drupal that has the built-in theme already, and all the modules you'll need, and it works really well. And the costs aren't that bad. We're only talking like 30 to 50 bucks. So look at one. And then you can preview these as well. And so you don't have to pay, all this money for a web developer. I think this one was a $40 theme. And it flows, it looks professional, it's clean. It's usable, and all these pictures, or usually the pictures don't come included with themes, but sometimes these little icons do. Go back here. So that's a theme. It essentially determines how our page is going to look. The rest of the site are how we make the site work the way we want. So the first is modules. So think of them as plugins or third-party apps that people write. Since Drupal is open source, there's a whole bunch of community support behind it, and people are writing code for it. So modules essentially are things we can add to our website for extra functionality. A module could be anything from connecting to Google Analytics to find out how people are viewing our website, or a module could become a subscription service so people can fill out put in their email and get subscribed to an email blast. Or a module can be something as complex as letting people text your website to upload photos to it. There's a whole bunch of really cool modules out there. And I'll kind of go through my favorite ones or the most important ones. But the idea with modules is they simplify your life. Blocks are the container areas for your website. So wherever you want content to show up, content shows up in what's called a block. Your theme determines where your blocks are at. So if you had, and I'll show you that live, kind of what a block means and how that works. And then lastly, a node is what Drupal calls content. So anything that, if you upload a picture, it's called a picture node, or they just call it a node, but you would reference it as a picture node. Or if you uploaded a Word doc, it's a node. Or if you built a web page, it's a node. So think of it as basically what Drupal saves as content. Are there any questions so far? If not, we'll keep going. So remember Apple, when they used to always say there's an app for that? just like Drupal, there's a module for it. Anything you want to try to do on your website, probably someone wrote code for it that you don't have to write the code to do. So you would take this module, you would copy and paste an install file, and it works. And so on the right here are some of the modules that are available for Drupal. And I'll break down, like, it might look complicated, like there's letters that don't even make words on this list, Brian. And I'll go through some of the basic ones, the ones that make sense or are important. But as you can see, if there's 1 million downloads for the Drupal core and almost the same amount of downloads for these modules at the top, those are the most popular ones because almost everyone uses it for their website. So some of my favorite modules are views. What a view does is, let's say, it almost works as like a database query. And if you're not familiar with that is, think about having multiple Excel documents saved on your computer. And you go, you know what, I want to cross-reference some of the information on my employee Excel file with my Excel file of hobbies that employees might have. And what views will do is it'll take those files, merge them together, and display it. What's really nice is you don't lose storage space on your server because you don't have to actually make a brand new file. All it's doing is displaying data. And so you can save actual memory by utilizing views to develop your pages and your content, because you would upload your types of content to your website and utilize a view to format it and put it together. If you play around a lot in Excel, think of it as a pivot table where we're managing data and displaying it. And I'll show you this live and how that kind of works. Path Auto basically can give your website, or every node, instead of calling it /node and a number, it'll actually change that into a title. So whatever your website, wherever the content is, let's say you uploaded a file that's called Brian's Favorite Jokes. This module would see that title of Brian Favorites Jokes and actually make it the URL /Brian's Favorite Jokes. And this makes your website a lot more streamlined and easy to use. And you can build patterns then where, as you upload content, it would detect what kind of content it is and provide the right type of titling to it in the URL. The most important one is using a WYSIWYG, which stands for what you see is what you get. The idea is that, so people don't like coding by hand for websites anymore. It's a pain, it's brutal. And so what people have done was build WYSIWYGs, or Drupal has a module called CK Editor. The idea is, as you see in the below image, that's what it looks like. It looks just like Word, and you can type in your text and format it by highlighting. In strict HTML world, you have to code that. Somebody asked, will you have a copy of the presentation? Yes, I will make sure that the presentation is shared out so you can utilize it. At the same time, I'm one of those people that I'm like totally fine if you wanted to teach your patrons how to use Drupal and use this slide as a jumping point. And so you can download it, share it to your patrons. I really don't care. You can remove my name if you wanted. I can slow down as well. But yeah, the PowerPoint will be shared. And here's what blocks are. And so I explained a little earlier kind of what is blocks. And so your theme would determine where your blocks are at. And then it would give generic names. And as you build content, you say, all right, this piece of content, I need you to be in the header. Or this piece of content, I want you to show up on the right sidebar. And you can define that in your blocks page. But essentially, this allows your website to look the same across all the different pages you design. And so this helps keep your theme in order. And again, nodes. Nodes is anything that's content, and we can define our own nodes. So if we were building a website that talked about cooking, for instance, we would build a node called ingredients. Then we can build a node called recipes, and we can actually upload pictures of ingredients and then write recipes that will tie back to those nodes of ingredients. It's really kind of hard to explain, but I'll show it to you live, and and then it should click. But basically, you can define the fields or what kind of information is needed for each node So to explain again with recipes, we will want to build a node for recipes and build fields like how long will this take, like length of time to cook and stuff like that. One of the most impressive features of Drupal is its taxonomy tables and its ability to manage metadata. So we can build our own content or text types or meta types where we can then utilize those for filtering or displaying specific content all over our website. And so if we're using views, we can have it query our list of taxonomy and only show specific content or specific nodes that meet a specific set of tags, if you will. So if you're familiar with WordPress, these would be called tags. So to get started with Drupal, if you're doing it on your own, it can be a little complex, but it's not that bad. The 4 things you need is hard drive space on a server, and this will be used for saving your core files for your Drupal page. Then you have to have a database, which also needs hard drive space. A database is a collection of data and is stored in tables and rows. The way Drupal works is it queries your database and shows content through a PHP page, which is a framework needed to display web pages on off of Drupal. And usually the last piece is running Apache. So if you're hosting with a web hosting provider, they already have all PHP and Apache installed. But if you're doing it on your own or at home on your own Windows box, you have to install these 3 things: MySQL, PHP, and Apache. So to get started, it's very, very simple. All you need to do is download the Drupal file, upload it, build the database, and then point your web server where the database is at. And I can kind of show you what it looks like too. So when you get to the installation, so once you get started, you upload your package of files to your website. As long as your server's running Apache and PHP, you'll see this right away without doing anything. All we did was upload a couple files to a server, and it says, how do you want to install in the top left? Then you choose. And then they'll ask you, where's your database at? And then you put your database information in. And then lastly, at the very end, it says, what do you want to call your site? Who's the admin of the site? What's the username and password we should make for the first time? And it sets it all up for us. It installs. There's no scripting we have to do. We just got to put in data. And that's why content management systems, at least Drupal, Joomla, and WordPress, are so amazing, because we don't do anything complex and it's simple and fun. So let's go ahead and see what Drupal looks like from a live perspective. Okay, so the first website I want to show you guys is called simplytest.me. So if everyone wants to go to that, we should see the site. This is a really cool tool to either evaluate modules for Drupal or even play with Drupal without having to set up a server. This is by far the easiest tool to use if you're running a Drupal class. So if you want to install Drupal, we're going to type in Drupal, and we use Drupal core because that's basically our framework we needed to get Drupal to work. For versions, you can choose version 8, but again, as we stated earlier, there's not that many modules created for Drupal 8 yet. It's still relatively new. So let's choose Drupal 7. And then all you do is hit Launch Sandbox. And within seconds, if we all do it at the same time, I wonder if we can take down the site. But it should take only a couple seconds to build us a Drupal page that the whole world can have access to. And it lasts about an hour, I believe. And then so after about an hour, or no, sorry, 24 hours. After 24 hours, the Drupal site deletes itself. So we built our first website, and I can actually share this site with everybody. I'm going to post the link in chat. So here's a website we're demoing. I built in seconds, or this website built for us in seconds. I'm going to log in. And this is essentially what the page looks like. There we go. So when you log in, this is what the admin page looks like. Our configuration site, and it's nothing complex or complicated, but this is essentially what the backend looks like for Drupal. I can give all my site information in here, so I can change the site name to, and if I can spell it helps, and I would just hit save. So now, play at home, and now update. So this is a demo site. Simple. It'll do it to every single page. We talk about content. We can add, basically from out of the box, Drupal lets you add articles or pages. So think of articles as blog posts, and a page is a page. So let's build a page called About Us. So remember when I was talking about HTML? This is HTML only. So I can't make anything bold. If I wanted something to be bold, I had to type in the code to do that. So now I created an About Us page. If I wanted to appear in my menu, this is how easy Drupal is. I'm going to go back to Edit. Oh, it probably wants me to do this. Menu settings, I want to do a menu link and save. There we go. And so now my text is bold. I have a link that says About Us. Now let's say, Brian, I want to change the order of my menus. How do I do that? So now we're talking about our structure of our website. So go to Structure, go to Menus. This would be our main menu. So I'm moving around the Go to Webinar control panel. So I want to list the links. And to rearrange, I click and drag, and hit save. And then I can close out, and there it goes. So simple, it's streamlined, it's smooth. So let's install a module. Because no one wants to type in HTML. So I'll show you guys how to do that. So I'm going to go to Drupal.org. And we're going to go to Download and Extend. So this is where you can download the plugins. And here's where the modules are at. It even shows our most installed tools here. I'm going to click Modules. And I can probably just scroll down and find what we need. There we are. CK Editor, or you can search for it at the top. So here it is. I click on it. And at the very bottom here, so see how like one of the most popular modules from before are now being built into Drupal 8. So I'm going to right click on this link that says tar.gz. I'm going to actually hit copy link address. I'm going to go back to my Drupal page and click modules. This is how easy it is to install a module. It says install from URL. I'm going to paste it and hit install. And ta-da, I now have a new module. I have to now enable it. And to enable it, I just click the little checkbox. I hit save configuration. So now I've enabled the module. Now I have to set it up. So this goes true with any module install. Usually I have to do some sort of setup. So I go to configure. And there's my text profile. So by default, these two are already built into Drupal. And I want to add my CK editor to it. So I'm going to edit. I can choose how my appearance is going to look. So I want the full toolbar to show all the buttons. What I want the interface to look like, and most of this you don't have to worry about. And we would just hit save. Go back to content. Let's build another piece of content. Do an article. And now I have this really cool tool in here. Didn't have to do anything fancy, didn't have to do anything expensive. It just works. So that's how you install a module. If you want to install a theme, you would go to Appearance. And these are where your themes are at. Works the same way. Install a new theme. Go back to Drupal. I can go to themes here. And you can just click on any one you like. Sometimes they let you do a preview, sometimes they don't. But it doesn't matter because we're playing. So I'm going to install a theme. Paste, install. And so now I have this theme here. I'm going to hit enable. Set as default. That's what it looks like. And so now I have a new theme. It updates all my pages, builds everything the way I like, nothing fancy or crazy. And it's smooth. When we talked about blocks at the beginning, to get to blocks, you go to structure. We go to blocks. And this determines where our content appears on our website. So it's powered by Drupal, for instance. Powered by Drupal. Let's say I didn't want that there. I can either edit it. Where'd it go? So I can go to configure. I can say don't appear at all. And then I can hit save. And there it goes, disappears. Let's say I wanted to move some content around, or I didn't want this search box here, and I wanted it in the toolbar. So go to structure, blocks. We're not sure where our blocks are at. Let's click this link here that says demonstrate regions. And this is where all the available blocks are at. So let's move, exit. So let's move that navigation box that we see over here to the other side. We don't have to rewrite all of our pages. See how on each page it's the same way? Back in the old days, you have to rewrite your code on every single page. Drupal, since it has it built in with things called blocks, we're going to just move it. So I want my navigation to be on the secondary side. Save blocks, close. And there's my navigation over here now. You know what? I want all of it to move. So let's do that. Structure, blocks. I'm going to just change these to secondary. Secondary. And I can rearrange these if I wanted. Hit save. And everything moves. Smooth, simple, and fun. And so that is kind of how Drupal kind of interacts. I mentioned nodes and content types. I'll show you that next. So when we talk about sites, the easiest way to explain Drupal is content is our data, structure determines how our data is going to work, and appearance is the way it looks. People is all of our users on our site. Modules is how we do our plugins. Configuration shows us how to do some stuff behind the scenes. And if you notice, sometimes our modules will be on this little admin page. But going back to how we can edit nodes. So let's go to our content types. Let's say we're making a website for cooking. I want to build a content type called the recipe. Alrighty, save and add fields. So I need the title of the recipe. I'm going to get rid of this because I don't want that. Delete. I'm going to add a field called ingredients. Then you ask, what kind of data are we saving in this field? And I want to do, we'll do text. And then what kind of box should we have people fill in? I want a text field. All right, then I want step-by-step instructions. Do I want to use an existing field or build my own? Oops, so I'm going to actually, I don't want that then. Sorry, so hit save. Then it asks us, this is for our ingredients field, save field length. Do we want it to be required? How big of a box do we want? How many values can we use? So I got my ingredients. Now I want to do my instructions. Do long text because it's going to be long, and I want a summary. So let's save. And then save again. And obviously all recipes need images, right? So picture of food. Do an image, save. And then this can also force us to use specific file types, maximum resolution, minimum resolution. It'll adjust it accordingly or deny it. Hit save. So now, make sure it's all good. Cool. So now let's build something for it, right? So I'm going to do add content, recipe. Let's do pie. And I'll just list out, let's see, crust, cherry filling, and I don't know what else. I don't make pie, so this is difficult. We'll just do, I don't know, that's it. We'll just do those 3 things. Instructions, turn on stove, put filling in pie, bake. So obviously don't come to my house for pie because you're not going to get any. We'll just go to Jewel and make some. And I use this little WYSIWYG editor to number it. I need to get an image of pie, so I'm going to go cherry pie. And I could plagiarize, I could have just stolen one. I'm going to save image as. Save that. Choose file. Oops, desktop. Open. Upload. And there's my picture of pie. And save. And so now here's how it looks like. Got my ingredients, instructions, picture of food. I can change the way my fields work. I don't have to have the word picture for food. So I can go to my structure again, content types. I'm going to manage my fields. So there's a display button here. Do I need the label that says picture of food to show up? I don't want it to show up, and so I can set to hidden, hit save. If I had multiple recipes built, all of them would update the same way. This is pretty cool, isn't it? So now let's incorporate taxonomy into this. So let's go to structure, taxonomy. We're going to call this one ingredients. Because technically, when we're talking about building a website, we shouldn't have to type in ingredients every single time. We should have a list of potential ingredients we could use and use those to fill out our forms or our recipe list. So list terms, let's add some. We will do pie crust. You don't have to put the description in. What else? I think that would be good. So now go back to my list. So now I have a list of ingredients. I'm going to go back to my content I made. Content types. We're going to go to manage fields. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do new ingredients. Actually, I think we can do it this way. Let's go back to our old ingredients. And so, widget type. No, we got to start from scratch. All right. Bear with me. This is the dangers of doing it live, right? Content types. Manage fields. So we're going to do this one. We can do checkboxes. We can't have the same label or the same field name, or these machine names is what they're called. All right, number of values, we can have as many as we like. And the tag, or taxonomy, we want to pull from the ingredients list. Hit save. So now, add content, recipe. I now have my ingredients list, and I can check these. Apple pie. And then hit save. So now I've listed out my ingredients in a way faster way, and I can do this to make website building easier. I technically should go back to my original content where I made my favorite pie and update it, right? Because I want it to look the same. So I'm no longer using this ingredients field. Apple pie crust. Save. So now I've streamlined, and I can rearrange this order. Like, you know, Brian, why would you put ingredients after the picture? So let's go back to our structure, content types, manage display, and let me just move this up. I no longer need this, so I'm going to just hide it. Save. Oops. Cool. Refresh the page. Oh, come on. All right, what did we do wrong? Settings and types. I didn't want links. I can just do plain text. Let's check this one out. Just for good measure, we'll move this up too. And since we don't need this field, we'll just delete it. And save. Let's see if that makes it better. Nope. So sometimes there's hiccups, but at least you guys get the kind of like the gist of it. So I'll show you views really fast then too, and I'll actually do it on a live site. Are there any questions with kind of like the demo or anything like that and how it works? All right, cool. I don't see anything, so I'll go ahead and move on. Okay, so backtracking a tad, I use Bluehost to host all my websites I build. the way things are set up on Bluehost is you got to build a database. So if I'm starting from scratch, not using something like simply test.me, I have to first build a database. There we are. So we go here. Takes a little bit sometimes. And again, if you're using like a hosting provider like this, they do all the legwork for you. So put a name in here, hit create database, and then it basically will build the databases down here, and then you create a user and tie it to it. From our file perspective, you have what's called a file manager usually on your websites. Oop, come on. It does not want to open today. All right, so I can't show you how the file manager works, but essentially it almost looks like your desktop with the folders and whatnot. And you would go to a folder and upload your Drupal download to it. You have to extract it because it zips it. So you have to extract the zip file and then upload all the content. All right, so in a live environment, here's how my website looks. Here's my website. All of this magic that you see here is all done through views. And these are my taxonomies. And so if I refresh, it's different because I told the view to randomly show me content. So structure, so I'll show you kind of how I built my company's site. So I have a ton of views, right? The first thing to understand is my content types. So content, I have what's called startup companies. Every startup company, every startup company, I'm sorry, I didn't want that one, has a logo. And so I created taxonomy, or I created a content type called startup, and everyone has a name. And so I would create all these content types for startups. Oop, there's some questions, hold on. So the question is, so is Bluehost used to make your website function for the public? It does. So I didn't want to host a server out of my house or out of the office, and I wanted to host it somewhere else. And so there's hosting providers. Bluehost is one, HostMonster is another, Rackspace is a third, and so you can, or even using Google Cloud, you can host your site somewhere else on somebody else's server and let people access it that way. If you're using Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services or even Rackspace, you have to have a technical know-how on how to install a Linux server, then put in Apache, put in PHP. Bluehost does that all for you, and all you have to do is upload the files you want, tell the site to build the databases you need, and everything else works. Because they're giving you a panel to kind of manage your server. So, so I have a list of content for startups, right? I want to go back to my views. So structure, views. And so I want, oh, come on. This. And so this determines how those contents are pulled. So I want to show specific fields. I want to show an image. I want to show where it comes from. Only show the content for if it's the content for startups, and then display it below. So I want it to show up randomly. Which, how many items do I want to display? 8 items. And I can change this to be more or less. And so basically, as I tweak my variables of how that content is being queried, I can impact how the page shows. And so this is the exact same content I developed, nothing different compared to the home page. I just told it to show up with less results, but I didn't have to build a whole new website, didn't have to build a whole new HTML code or scripting for it. And I told it to query less when it's on this page versus this page. I don't know if that makes sense. It's one of the harder things to kind of explain and walk through. Are there any questions thus far? Oops. Excuse me as my computer goes rogue. Oh, come on. Oops, sorry about that. Looks like we got disconnected for just a second as my computer started acting up. But are there any general questions on what we covered today? Do you feel confident enough to at least get started? You can't break it. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways of today is when you're talking about building websites, you can't break it. Once you're in a live environment, maybe, but that's why you make backups. You can copy your database and you copy your web page or your website folder, save it somewhere else, and you can either tweak it, the saved copy or the duplicated copy, and if it works still after you're done playing, then you push it to live. So use that like simply test.me to kind of pilot your ideas, experiment with what works and what doesn't, and that should help kind of make the world a better place. Are there any questions, comments, concerns?
Hey Brian, it's Louise. I've got a question for you. I noticed that you were using a Mac. Are there any considerations if somebody has a Windows environment?
No, so the way Drupal works is we're pushing this on a server. So we don't actually, so Drupal is all web-based. So when we talk about interacting with our website from a development standpoint, you don't have to, you can actually do it off of a Chromebook because we're just going to a website to edit and tweak our stuff. If we're building a server, however, to run Drupal off of, then you would have to run it off of like a Linux server or a Windows server with Apache, PHP, and a database all in one. But from a management standpoint, it doesn't matter what kind of computer you have.
Okay, great. Looks like you've got another question that just came in. Can you see that there?
Yep. So Bluehost, somebody asked, is Bluehost free? It's not. You have to pay like $4 or $5 a month for it, which isn't bad if you just wanted a site to play with. I pay more because I run production level stuff off of it because I have what's the word I'm looking for? I have like scripts and stuff that run that you probably would never have to worry about. So the $4 or $5 a month works perfectly for people that are just hosting a website where they want to display information, let people interact, sign up for newsletters. It works well. If you're building a store, however, like you want people to use your credit card to buy things, you might want to spend a little bit more money on a hosting platform. And they have different levels. So if you want more oomph, if you will, you kind of have to pay to play. But for building a site just for your library, you can get away with a $4 or $5 thing. Are there any other questions?
Yep, there was one more in the list asking if you could talk about how you back up your site and your files.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's go to, so the way I would do it, so some hosting providers have something called like a site backup where they do it for you. So if I go to Bluehost's version of it, I can actually download specific folders. So I would download I would just download the whole directory, and then I would download the database. If you didn't have that option with your hosting provider, or you were running it off your own server where you wouldn't have that tool set, the way you would do it is go to Give me a second to find where they put the link. So there's an admin section on your PHP or on your database structure. So you would go to wherever you would wherever you created that database. And once that loads, it takes a little bit. So we want to download our database and download our files because they're two separate entities. Our database stores what's going to display on the web page, and the files kind of store the code on how those content should appear. If that makes sense. Database is data, files are appearance. And so the way I do it is I actually will go to my database, and you can export. And then you would essentially export the file as a SQL file. You hit go, and then it'll ask you where you want to download it, and you would save a file, and that would be your backup for the database end, so all the data. When we talk about our files or how the site will display itself, that would be our file manager. I wonder if we're just having issues today. So alternatively, if the built-in tools aren't working, you can use something called an FTP tool. So I use FileZilla. Let me just connect to my database here. So now I'm connecting to my site files. And so all I got to do is I would just right-click and then hit download, and I would download a copy of all my files to my computer. And that way I would have a copy of it. If I wanted to go live, I would right-click, copy, and then I would paste it again and create a new directory and save all the files in here so that I would have it multiple times. I don't know if that makes sense. But essentially you'd have to go find your database, download the database files, and then go find wherever you have your files saved and also download the files.
All right, thanks, Brian. I've got one more question for you. Thinking about our libraries in Rails, there's many different size libraries, and I can see a need for, maybe a small website on up to a very complicated website. Does Drupal have any kind of limitations on, how many modules you can use, how many pictures you can upload, or is that more depending on the size of your server, I suppose?
Yep, so excellent question. So it would all depend on the strength of your server. So if you're using more modules, your server is going to run harder to run all those modules on a continual basis. Or if you have a whole bunch of images, your server is going to need more storage space to save all of it. Drupal as a whole doesn't have any of those limitations. And it's pretty well coded, in fact, where let's say you do have like 1 million modules. I've never seen a site with 1 million modules. I have probably like 150 on mine. And the way they run, it doesn't actually bog down your server too much. And so as long as your server is able to handle it, Drupal does the rest.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. And there was one more question. When you save files, can you save it on a flash drive? How large are these files in your database that you're?
So my database, I think, is just under 1 gig. That's because I have a whole bunch of images, a lot of text, and a lot of custom scripts that are running. Most people's databases are probably well within like 500 megabytes. And then from a file perspective, so we got database and files. From a file perspective, you're probably looking at, let's see what the download size is anyway. So Drupal, we're going to just download this and see how big it is. So the Drupal file itself is probably, after you extract it, about 30 megabytes. And then as you add modules, it'll be like 1 megabyte or 2 per module, depending on the complexity of it. So yes, you can save your copies or your backups to a flash drive to store it.
All right. Well, I think that's the last of our questions. Thank you so much. I thought this was really interesting, and I hope I hope our audience will find it useful and can make their own website. So thank you,
Yep,
Brian.
definitely. And if you have questions afterwards, or if you watch the recording and you have questions, feel free to email me, and I'll reply as fast as I can. So if you have questions after you're building, or you run into a roadblock of, hey, my install failed, send me a screenshot of what you're trying to do, and I can help you out.
Okay, awesome, terrific. Thank you so much, Brian. And as we mentioned earlier, Brian gave us permission to record and share his slides. So I will process those and get them up on the Rails website, and I will email everyone when those are ready to view. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Brian. Have a good day.
Yep, thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.